Guys, the Hungarian Grand Prix has come and went, and now we're going to go over it. This is going to be a quick, dirty, tired, late night recap of the Hungarian Grand Prix. But here it is. Here's what happened. We're going to go over my quick hits, my weekend winners and losers, and then go over the predictions that I made before the weekend started. Let's go ahead. Let's jump on into it. Like I mentioned, we're going to jump straight into it and hit our race quick hits. This is going to be a really quick one because realistically, if we're really looking at it, the Hungarian Grand Prix wasn't the most exciting. And so we'll go ahead, we'll run in through our quick high level things that happened over this weekend. Obviously, I think one of the big ones is that Red Bull breaking the record for most wins in a row, with 12, passing, I believe, the McLarens from the 80s. And I saw a fact on Twitter after the race was over that if Mercedes had not managed to win Brazil last season, Red Bull would be up to, I believe, 22 race wins in a row. So this is definitely a bit of a dominant performance from Red Bull here recently, and they have no signs of slowing up anytime soon. Moving on, we have McLaren. It appears that they finally might be here to stay. The car that they were given in Silverstone, really to take advantage of these upgrades that they brought. Not a lot of people pegged them to go into Hungary and really perform extremely well, but you know what? They came and proved everybody wrong. A very solid weekend from McLaren overall. Lando Norris finishing P2 and Oscar Piastri also in the top 5. Hard to say that's a down weekend that many thought they might have. Moving on towards Mercedes, and it really looks like Mercedes is still missing something. They're really close. It seems like they're right there, and there's these little moments where you can see the potential, but they're just missing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and it just really is holding them back when it comes to race pace specifically. Obviously, we saw Lewis take pole position, the first time we've seen a non-Max Verstappen pole in a very, very long time. It was quite exciting, gave a lot of people a lot of hope for race day, but unfortunately, that Mercedes is just missing just something. It's hard to say exactly what, but hopefully they figure it out and they'll be back to challenging for race wins once again. Then, kind of on the same vein, we have Ferrari. Ferrari is, what is going on? We need to have an open dialogue and an open line of communication here. What's going on? It really feels like you're just going backwards, and I don't know how much longer your fans are going to take it as you just continue to slide down and down the order. I mean, you start the grid P6 and P11, a bit of a disappointing qualifying for Carlos Sainz, but I mean, essentially straight off we have, Carlos making a charge to the field, but you ultimately end up just finishing P7 and P8. I mean, this is a Ferrari that was challenging for wins just last season. Did you not make any changes to the car over the season break? I mean, we need to be honest with ourselves here. What's going on? You got to get that figured out, and you got to get it figured out quick because everyone else around you is upgrading, and it just doesn't seem like you're keeping up. And speaking of not keeping up, we have Aston Martin. Really, a track in a weekend that many pegged Aston Martin to come and actually perform pretty well, and they're again basically nowhere to be found. I mean, you end up getting a double points finish. In a P9 and P10 finish, but I mean, realistically, when you have Fernando Alonso challenging for podiums every single race weekend to begin the season, to now in a circuit which should have benefited your car the most, you really got to look yourself in the eye here and try and figure out what's going on as well. It seems like there's a lot of these teams that came out of the block strong and they're slowly fading back, and you have teams like McLaren who started quite literally at the back in Bahrain and now find themselves running at the front. Aston Martin, Fernando Alonso, Lance Stroll, get it figured out. Let's get a move on. Come on. And I think the last big quick hit, actually we'll go with two more. We have Alpine. Alpine, what is going on? Back-to-back weekends of a double DNF. Granted, this one is a little bit different, but it is a turn 1, lap 1 incident resulting in a double DNF from Alpine. That's a tough day for Alpine and Alpine as a team and Alpine fans. I'm so sorry. And then the last quick hit I'll go over is a special shout out to Daniel Ricciardo. First weekend back on the grid, and he found himself a Q2 appearance and a pretty respectable 13th finish in the race. Obviously, he was involved in the turn 1 incident at the start of the race as well. And so to battle back to a P13 finish, I think pretty worthy of mention. But there it is. Those are the quick hits from the Hungarian Grand Prix. Let's move on now to our weekend winners and losers. Moving straight into our weekend winners and losers. And I think our winners is pretty obvious. The losers, maybe a little less so, but I think I picked probably the best choice if we're being honest, if you look at the weekend as a whole. Starting with our weekend winners, we have gone for, obviously, I think McLaren makes the most sense. Like I mentioned in Quick Hits, this is a circuit that not many would have chosen for them, even themselves saying that the Hungaroring may not suit their car the best, and Lando Norris ends up putting it on the podium once again, and Oscar Piastri actually running in the top 3 for quite a while before ultimately, I believe, some damage with the battle of Sergio Perez ultimately puts him down the order, but still finishing P5. I mean, McLaren seems to have put it all together. I think we'll get the biggest realization and the biggest moment to either say they're back or maybe it's a bit of an aberration next weekend when they head to Spa. I think it's going to be very similar to Silverstone, but obviously with much more power needs more than anything else. So we're going to keep an eye on it, but for the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend, McLaren, you are my winners. And then the highs of McLaren to the lows of the low. My weekend losers, unfortunately, have to go, I think, which there's one of two ways you can look at this. Either it's a little disappointing that you end up being chosen as a weekend loser, or you can choose to look at the positive sides of the weekend as a whole. But Alfa Romeo, I think I have picked as my biggest weekend losers this week. I mean, you had Zhou Guanyu with a qualifying of a lifetime starting P5. Valtteri Bottas also making it into Q3, starting P7. Unfortunately, though, after it was all said and done and the dust settles, Alfa Romeo, no points to show for it. Zhou Guanyu, I think, had an issue with the start that caused him to effectively fall almost all the way down the order and all the way into turn 1, which ultimately was the reason of the incident between the Alpines and Daniel Ricciardo. And ultimately, no points for Alfa Romeo. I think after such lofty results all weekend, I mean, we had Zhou Guanyu topping Q1 on the hard tires and a double Q3 appearance and a double top 10 start at the Hungarian Grand Prix. To come away with no points has got to be a little disappointing. But unfortunately, Alfa Romeo, you are my biggest losers for the weekend. I do want to give a special shout out, though, to Alpine. I mean, a double DNF in lap 1, turn 1. Not going to feel good. It's hard to say you're real. I didn't want to give you the biggest losers because almost it's not even your fault. It was a domino effect. Unfortunately, you just had to be there at the right moment and the right time. So a special shout out to Alpine, but Alfa Romeo ultimately my biggest loser. Moving on to our last segment here, my predictions results. If you're new here, every race weekend before the weekend begins, I make my predictions, including my biggest positive surprise, my biggest disappointment, my qualifying top 3, my podium predictions, my Haas predictions for the race weekend, and for this weekend specifically, we also threw in a Daniel Ricciardo prediction for the weekend, just similar to how we do our Haas predictions. But we start now at the top with my biggest positive surprise prediction, and I predicted Fernando Alonso to have a good weekend after really falling off the last few race weekends. I thought going to the Hungaroring would suit the Aston Martin a lot better than it did, and I predicted Fernando Alonso to kind of get back up near the podium, which he really has struggled to get close to these last few rounds. And unfortunately, that's 0 for 1 for me. Fernando Alonso finishes in the points, but unfortunately, it's only a P9 finish, and at this point, Aston Martin is going backwards. Moving on to the next one, we have my biggest disappointment prediction, and I went with similar to my Aston Martin pick for biggest positive surprise. I picked Williams as my biggest disappointment. This is a circuit that really should not suit their car quite that good, and we saw it as we got down towards the finish with Logan Sargent ending up finishing last on track, P18 with the double DNF of Alpine. And I'm giving myself a half point for this one because Alex Albon dragging that Williams to P11 and a car in a circuit that really shouldn't go together that well. I'm giving myself a half point because Logan really did struggle most of the weekend. Alex Albon doing Alex Albon things and putting that thing in P11 on track at the end of the race is definitely worth a shout out. So I'm giving myself a half point out of 1 for my Williams prediction for biggest disappointment. Moving on to my qualifying results, and I think this is where the biggest shakeup that I've seen in the last few predictions videos I've done. If you're new here and you haven't seen them before, every race weekend I've made the same predictions for P1, both in pole and in the race, and that is a Max Verstappen pole And for the first time in more than a few races, we finally get that one wrong. I tell myself every weekend that until someone can prove me wrong, that someone else can in fact take pole position from Max, I was going to put him there, and we finally get it. Unfortunately, it also comes with an 0 for 3 qualifying results for me prediction, because I had a Max Verstappen pole, a Carlos Sainz P2, and a Fernando Alonso P3. Unfortunately, Max ended up P2, Carlos Sainz ended up P11, and Fernando ended up P8 in qualifying. So it's an 0 for 3 day in qualifying results, but it was a great qualifying session, and I do really enjoy the new format that they're testing out. They're only using hards, mediums, and softs in Q1, 2, and 3 respectively. I think it's something they should keep. It made a lot of very exciting finishes, but unfortunately for me, it comes with an 0-3 result in qualifying predictions. And then of course we have my podium predictions. And like I mentioned in the qualifying predictions, I always, it is a hard, fast rule as of right now. Max Verstappen occupies the P1 spot in my race predictions, and ding ding, that is the one of 3 predictions I got correct for the race results. I predicted a Max Verstappen, Fernando Alonso, Lewis Hamilton podium. Lewis, after taking pole position on Saturday, really looked poised to give me another positive point to finish on the podium, but a terrible start and a surging McLaren squad pushes Lewis outside the order, and he finishes P4. Fernando Alonso, as I mentioned, only finishes P9, and Max Verstappen wins by 33 seconds on track, and a dominant race result for Max. And so congratulations to them. Unfortunately, it's a 1 for 3 result from race results. I think I really need to start expanding my my predictions into a more papaya-colored shade as we continue on. And then we have my Haas predictions of the weekend. I really wasn't looking forward to this one, as the Hungarian Grand Prix just doesn't feel like it would suit the Haas car. Not that there really are many circuits that do. I predicted 2 cars getting into Q2. I'm giving myself a half point here. You'll notice I'm very much more lenient on my Haas predictions. 2 cars into Q2, I'm giving myself a half point, as Nico ended up making it out and Kevin unfortunately did not. And then my other prediction was a 1-car finish in the top 14, which I am giving myself a 1 out of 1 for, as Nico Hülkenberg finishes P14 on track. And so that really is my best results of a section that I've had this entire weekend. So 1.5 out of 2 results for my Haas predictions. I'll take it every single time. And then finally, my Daniel Ricciardo prediction. Daniel rejoins the grid for the first time this season in an AlphaTauri, which realistically is not the best. But I thought Daniel would come out focused, but not necessarily finish as high up as many others might propose. So I predicted a Q2 appearance, ding ding, and a no points, but top 14 finish, and also ding ding, finishing P13 on track ahead of Yuki Tsunoda. That is a 2 for 2 in my predictions for Daniel Ricciardo. It wasn't a points finish, but honestly, seeing him finish P13 after the incident in turn 1 and the opening segment of the race, I will take that every single time. And so that is a 2 for 2 results for my Daniel Ricciardo predictions. And if we come down to it, out of 12 possible prediction points, I end up getting 5 correct, 5 points out of 12 for a cool 41% correct. I've really gone roller coaster. It really seems like any given weekend I either get like 80% correct or like 10% correct. This might have been the most in the middle that I've seen in a while. So it's very up and down. We saw a very mixed up weekend with the inclement weather and the tire deg, of course, across the race. But it was a fun one, to say the least, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. Seeing what we have next as we head to Belgium next weekend. Guys, that wraps up the Hungarian Grand Prix weekend. My predictions are very mid-ground so far this weekend, but I think that kind of matches the Grand Prix we had this week. It was a very, very tough one in terms of on-track action. We had some moments here and there, but ultimately it kind of just became a bit of a snooze fest across the entire weekend. But what did you think? How did your predictions go? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you are an F1 fan, go ahead, hit that red subscribe button down below and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single upload. But we head to Spa-Francorchamps next weekend, the Belgian Grand Prix before the summer break. I can't wait. Spa is one of my favorite tracks in the F1 calendar. I'm super excited to see it. We'll have my predictions video coming soon on Thursday this week. I'm looking forward to it. I hope you are too. But until then, I'll see you guys in the next one.